I am going to start recording.
Recording in progress.
Why have you come forward?
Specifically the LA wildfires. It made me realize that God help everyone in LA if NGA was actually, turned on live at all the locations.
This person has direct knowledge of high-level decisions at LA-based company NGA. He fears retaliation, so he's speaking anonymously. We're using another person's voice to protect his identity.
We honestly have this belief that we can figure it out on the fly.
NGA is one of 4 contractors the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal-OES, hired to create the state's new digital 911 system called Next Generation 911. NGA was awarded contracts for these 2 regions, where dispatch records reveal 911 call problems resulting in delays by emergency responders.
My boyfriend needs an ambulance. Okay, ma'am, for some reason our transfer is not working. What does he need a paramedic for?
When we asked about the problems, NGA blamed transfer issues at this 911 center on the department's old technology, not on NextGen. But emails from the agency's 911 manager said the problems occurred only after they went live with NGA's new system, a system the manager called inconsistent at best.
It was always somebody else's fault. That was always the word from the top. It's always somebody else's fault.
NGA's new NextGen 911 network was supposed to be tested end-to-end in Cal-OES's lab, shown in these photos on the agency's website. Also shown, Cal-OES's Budge Courier, the visionary behind the project who left Cal-OES in August. This insider and a second independent source who is actively working on the project say NGA's system passed the test in pieces, but never end-to-end. And yet the state still deployed it to handle real-life 911 calls anyway.
In theory, it should be you're testing all the functionality at the same time. In reality, they tested one function at a time.
For instance, he says they would test just transferring a call and then separately test answering calls that were on hold.
That's an issue because in real life, you don't get to test it just function by function.
Ultimately, did the Cal-OES lab test these systems as a whole, end to end, and did these systems pass?
As a whole, no.
He says the network was installed into Desert Hot Springs Police Department in the Coachella Valley, where dispatch records we told you about earlier show frequent problems these past 2 years.
Yeah, they were a guinea pig. There's no other way to say it. We knew, putting it in, that it was not fully baked.
The big question is, did Cal-OES know? Did Budge Courier know about these issues?
Yeah, they knew.
How do you know that?
Conversations, listening in mostly. It also got to the point that, to some degree, we were instructed not to put everything in writing.
We reached out to NGA, Cal-OES, and Budge Courier. In separate responses, NGA's CEO and Courier said the claims are alarming and inaccurate. When we asked for an explanation, Courier didn't respond. NGA's attorney sent a statement to us saying NGA does extensive end-to-end testing with all deployments. He said there's a report and certification showing NGA fully passed, but he declined to share them with us, saying they belong to Cal-OES. We asked Cal-OES for the results. We also filed public records requests. Cal-OES told us it located some records and is reviewing them to potentially redact confidential information before deciding to release them. At Cal-OES, 911 branch manager Paul Troxel worked under Courier and is still on the project. We caught up with him at a meeting.
Candace Wen here with NBC Bay Area. We've been trying to hear from you about NextGen.
Yes.
We've been hearing from sources who have knowledge of the rollout who say that testing was not thorough and that some here at the state agency were aware of that, still rolled it out.
So I got your email and I forwarded it to our communications team, Amy Palmer and her team.
I think you're the best person with firsthand knowledge about what's going on. Would we be able to speak with you about it?
Again, we'll have to coordinate with the PIO team.
Cal-OES's public information team has not responded to our questions. In a statement, the agency reiterated what they announced at that meeting, that they paused the rollout of the new technology to review the NG911 system, and implementation of the NG911 system statewide is a priority for Cal-OES.
That review is going to inform how we move forward with the project.
This insider says what could have happened in Los Angeles with a problematic 911 system still haunts him.
I'm sorry people made wrong decisions. and people didn't hold other people accountable.
There is a new twist in our investigation into California's new 911 calling system. We found similar issues across the country. This comes after a high-level insider accused the state and a company of failing to thoroughly test California's new 911 network, putting communities at risk.
Did landing these California contracts first help NGA get those other contracts in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. It's always California's right there at the top of the list. Hey, we have Cal OES, our first big contract.
After landing more than $100 million in contracts in 2019 with the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, to help create our state's new internet-based 911 network, LA-based company NGA struck similar deals with government agencies in Oklahoma the following year and in Florida and Louisiana the year after that.
There was always this, pie in the sky belief that one day you're going to figure it out. We're going to take over the world.
Speaking anonymously because he fears retaliation, we recently heard from this person who has direct knowledge of high-level decisions within NGA. We're using another person's voice to protect his identity. On top of missed project deadlines and 911 call problems at some of the first California dispatch centers to use the state's new next-gen 911 network, he and another independent source who is actively working on the network say NGA and Cal OES failed to thoroughly test the system end-to-end before deploying it, putting communities at risk.
Yeah, they were a guinea pig. There's no other way to say it. We knew, putting it in, that it was not fully baked.
NGA denies the allegations, saying it does extensive end-to-end testing with all deployments. Still, as a result of concerns we've reported, Cal OES suspended deployment of its next-gen system.
In real time.
The agency brought on new leadership, a consultant, and is doing a system-wide review. While waiting for the results of that review, our investigative unit found similar concerns in 3 other states where NGA was hired to create next-generation 911 systems.
It seemed like we hit a roadblock every other week.
In Louisiana, East Baton Rouge Parish Communications District says it's working to end their contract with NGA. Officials complained about dropped calls and call transfer delays.
Nothing on our end. It's 100% on their end.
In Oklahoma, this 2023 memo to the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments describes numerous call problems. Things got so bad, one of the call centers on NextGen went back to its old system. And just last month, Santa Rosa County officials in Florida terminated their NGA contract.
NGA 911 has failed to provide us adequate coverage, and I believe now all but one county has already terminated their contracts.
In a written statement to us, NGA said it is currently in good standing with Oklahoma, and it acknowledged its parting ways with East Baton Rouge, Louisiana. NGA didn't comment on the issues in Florida, only saying, as a direct result of NBC's incorrect and misleading reporting, some Florida locations have decided to halt discussions with NGA. However, nearly 7 months before our first report on NextGen 911 ever debuted, the state of Florida had already sent this letter to NGA's CEO saying his company failed to implement reliable next-generation 911 services in any county in Florida. There's been discrepancies with testing, and NGA 911 was discouraging independent testing. Florida's director of telecommunications questioned NGA's internal testing methods and the positive results it allegedly achieved, saying Florida's NextGen 911 project was on the brink of collapse due to continued excuses, lack of accountability, and lack of performance.
It gets to a point where certain companies lose the right to continue to provide public safety. And I think, unfortunately, NGA is there.
Internal messages sent to our investigative unit appear to show the engineers who built this new system questioned whether it was ready. One said he wouldn't trust the new system with his own family's emergency.
We're going to walk you through these messages and have you hear from one of those engineers and another source who claim their warnings were ignored and they were pushed to mislead government clients about how ready the 911 system was.
We heard from project insiders.
We knew, putting it in, that it was not fully baked.
Now we're seeing documents that appear to support claims the California Office of Emergency Services, or CalOES, deployed the state's internet-based 911 system called Next Generation 911 before it was ready, and that a state contractor, NGA, knew its technology had problems but still rolled it out. These 6 NGA engineers were building the new next-gen system for projects in California, Oklahoma, and West Virginia, according to the engineer we spoke to. They communicated with each other on the messaging app Telegram. We're not showing their usernames or profile photos to protect their privacy and our source. A source who provided us this April 2022 conversation, showing one engineer say to the others, "I don't think it's production ready," asking for their unfiltered thoughts on the next-gen 911 call handling system they were working on. One of them responds, "It doesn't seem ready." Would you trust it if it's an emergency situation for a family member? Good question. No. Another says, "I would trust. It's not bad, just not something I would pay for." In another part of the same conversation, an engineer appears to describe the call problems they were dealing with, saying, "When someone tries to call us, it doesn't work so well." Another responds, "I'll assume that's a politically correct way of saying it sucks." It's unclear whether improvements were made between this Telegram chat and the project delivery dates, but in February 2023, California rolled out NGA's 911 call handling system at Desert Hot Springs PD in the Coachella Valley. Within 4 months, the department started reporting frequent problems, like calls dropping and being unable to transfer calls.
Ma'am, for some reason our transfer is not working. What does he need a paramedic for?
You know, a lot of executive leadership said that this is something that can be fixed later. We just need to go live. We need to start that revenue flowing.
This is one of the engineers in that Telegram chat. We're disguising his face and using someone else's voice because he fears retaliation.
I made it known to several of the executive team that I think it shouldn't go to live. I think that lives can be put at stake.
He may not have been the only one to warn an executive. This separate Telegram conversation months earlier shows one of them tell a person named Mike DeWeese, NGA's VP of Technology, "I can't imagine it being in a 911 environment yet." DeWeese appears to respond, "Yes, sir, you are correct." We reached out to DeWeese and NGA. DeWeese told us he can't confirm or deny the chat. NGA didn't respond to our questions about the Telegram messages. Rather, its CEO, Don Ferguson, sent us a statement saying NGA has met every requirement set by the state of California, completed all state-mandated testing, and achieved all necessary certifications. We test and retest and do not deploy technology without explicit authorization from the California Office of Emergency Services and the local public safety agencies we serve. Regarding rollout issues, Ferguson said NBC's reporting has ignored inherent anticipated complexities of a large-scale transition of this nature.
I know that I lay a lot of the blame at NGA leadership, but I think a lot of it also is to blame with CalOES.
In an email, CalOES told us it can't speak to internal discussions at other organizations and that upgrading to Next Generation 911 is a vital investment in public safety for nearly 40 million Californians. Accepting that it is a complex upgrade, this engineer says the problems that close to deployment still weigh on him.
It quite possibly could have caused issues and loss of life, or at least service being denied to people.
The concerns weren't just heavy on him. Another NGA source who worked with 911 centers tells us they knew they couldn't deliver the product on time and kept customers in the dark. The source says they were very often asked to provide delivery timelines that were aspirational at best, knowingly inaccurate at worst. That alone did it for me, the person tells us. I can't be part of this. These are people's lives. So how did the rollouts go? A county in West Virginia with NGA's system tells us its upgrade was successful, calling NGA a tremendous partner. But things didn't go as well in California and at least these 3 states, we confirmed through government records. All experienced either 911 call problems or project delays. Florida's telecommunications director told NGA's CEO last year in this letter, their project is on the brink of collapse due to NGA's continued excuses. When we asked, NGA declined to comment about the Florida issues.
It was always someone else's problem. It was a routing issue from the third party, or it was a cloud provider issue. or something like that. There was never any accountability.
NGA declined an interview for this story. But before we learned about these engineer messages, Ferguson spoke with us about rollout problems. What grade would you give your company for that kind of service?
Speaking for NGA, I'd give NGA an A. And the reason I would do that is because the issues that we're confronting, these are issues that other independent organizations that provide the standards that are the guidelines to deploying NextGen didn't see.
If I were to rate them when we first went live, I would probably give them closer to a D or D-. We were just chasing profit over functionality.
Years behind schedule and nearly $500 million spent. Just now, the state is going in a different direction to build California's digital 911 system. Investigative reporter Candace Nguyen broke this story on safety complaints last year. She joins us in the newsroom. And Candace, I understand you just got back from Sacramento and you've got a new development.
That's right, Jess. For a year now, deployment of California's next generation 911 system has been on hold after we exposed some of those issues. The California Office of Emergency Services announced a new plan today to get NextGen back on track. So the original plan consisted of breaking up the state into 4 regions and building separate 911 systems that would interconnect. State officials first projected those regions would be online by 2021. Right now, though, only 23 of the state's roughly 450 dispatchers, so some 5%, are taking calls over this new network. Our investigative unit found some of the first agencies to use the new system reported dropped and misrouted 911 calls. In one case, callers in Tuolumne County were unable to call 911 for 12 hours. Dispatchers there called it disastrous. So CalOS's new plan consists of getting rid of the regions and securing new contracts to set up a single digital 911 system for the entire state. The agency says the new system should be online by 2030. So CalOS has repeatedly declined our recent interview requests, and so we pressed them for answers in Sacramento today. This project is years past the original deadline. Nearly $500 million have already been spent. So my question is, where is the accountability for the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent on the first plan that CalOS is pivoting from?
I appreciate that inquiry, and I think taking that into consideration, we're happy to address that, and take this into consideration now. But I think as it's been laid out in the plan, we're really trying to identify what has occurred, what we can do to move forward.
Do you have an idea of what the final bill will be for Californians? Ultimately, are we talking about $1 billion, $2 billion?
I think it would be irresponsible to make any sort of guess along those lines, but I think that we would just be very cognizant of what it is that we need to accomplish.
For more than a year, investigative reporter Candace Nguyen has been formally requesting the emails of a former state leader that might explain the oversight of California's problematic digital 911 network. And for over a year, the agency has not released them. So let's bring in Candace. And Candace, what have you learned?
CalOS tells us there are thousands of these messages. As a public agency, it is legally obligated to disclose them promptly, according to the California Public Records Act. But we haven't received one of this former project leader's emails.
As I think about rolling out NextGen in California.
September 2024, Budge Courier had his official last day at the California Office of Emergency Services as Assistant Director of Public Safety Communications and as the visionary and leader of California's Next Generation 911 project. Initially budgeted for $300 million in 2018, Courier's plan promised to bring the state's 911 emergency calling system into the digital age.
NextGen prepares us to receive all of that data much better than the way it's set up now.
7 years and nearly $500 million later, the state is ditching Courier's plan and moving in a different direction after our investigative unit first exposed a laundry list of concerns more than a year ago. From dispatchers reporting dropped and misrouted 911 calls delaying life-saving help.
They were testing our lives.
To project insiders saying the technology wasn't ready, but the state deployed it anyway.
We knew, putting it in, that it was not fully baked.
A month after Courier's departure, NBC Bay Area filed a public records request with CalOS asking for his emails. We wanted to know what was happening behind the scenes as project delays mounted. More sources came forward reporting problems, and the agency said it's pushing forward.
This is exactly why we have a Public Records Act and why we have the people's right to know, so that the press and public can have full transparency into how government is doing its job.
David Loy is legal director of the First Amendment Coalition, which fights for government transparency. We reached out to him after Cal OES continuously delayed turning over the emails we asked for. Over the past 14 months, our team of journalists asked the agency for those public records at least 30 times, in writing, by phone, and in meetings. These are the agency's responses to us, giving various reasons for the delays, like staffing and the Southern California fires and storms.
The problem here with a delay of over a year or more is that documents delayed are documents denied. People don't trust what they can't see. They can't hold their government accountable without access to the information necessary to do so.
While Cal OES has provided us records in response to other requests, including some emails from Courier's former boss, we're still waiting for Courier's emails. During a recent state 911 meeting, we pressed for answers. Those now in charge of the project had the agency's attorney respond.
Why haven't we received these public records?
Well, as you know, Candace, we've been in dialogue. In fact, you and I have spoken very recently, and I actually even communicated with you this morning to give you an update on where things are at. We produced already a significant amount of documents over the years, and this is the next in the phase of those to produce. We have produced approximately 3,000 documents to you.
But not the emails.
Well, but let me finish. Those are the ones that we thought we wanted to make sure we got to you, and they were very complex, as you know. So that's what we did, and so those next ones are on their way to you soon. So
Respectfully, we have been receiving promises like that, just like that, for months, and we still don't have the records we've been talking about.
yeah, well, all I will say is we've continued to engage. We've spoken. You have my phone number. I'm sorry that it has taken longer than has been ideal.
It simply should not take this long. It may not be something they can turn around in a day, but a year or more is simply unacceptable, because at the end of the day, transparency is the oxygen of accountability.
A new proposed law aims to increase oversight of California's troubled 911 upgrade called Next Gen 911. Now, the lawmaker behind the bill says he learned about the problems with the project from a series of reports by our investigative unit. Senior investigative reporter Candace Wynn broke that story about the warning signs more than a year ago, and she joins us now. Candace.
Republican State Senator Tony Strickland has introduced the Fix 911 Act. The goal, Strickland says, to restore accountability, transparency, and legislative oversight of California's Next Generation 911 project. Californians have spent nearly $500 million on Next Gen already, but Strickland says the state has little to show for it.
And you can't just scrap it and say, oh, oops, and then move on. We as legislators need to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, because every wasted dollar from the legislature and the governor specifically is a dollar they're not spending in a valuable program.
Years behind schedule and plagued by technical difficulties, the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, recently announced it's taking the Next Gen 911 project in a completely different direction. SB 985 would require the agency to submit quarterly reports to state lawmakers detailing everything from project timelines and system readiness to cost and spending. Since 2024, the investigative unit has uncovered cost overruns, project delays, and connection issues with the next-gen technology. The dispatchers told us has delayed life-saving help. After our first report, the state put deployment on hold. More than a year later, the agency plans to put out requests for new government contracts to try and get things back on track. I spoke with OES recently. They tell me they already report to lawmakers annually and upon request regarding Next Gen 911. They say there has been accountability. What's your response to that?
I think that's laughable. Okay, where are we? You spent $500 million. You have nothing to show for it. Where are we? And my bill says quarterly. You know, they come in and do a song and dance in a year, and they pretty much don't report back the progress. Where's the progress? It's news stations like yours that actually bring a shining light on. They're hoping that no one pays attention.
I reached out to the governor's office and Cal OES. Both agencies told me they don't typically comment on pending legislation, adding no additional comment.